Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ding Darling Wildlife Refuge. My name is Jeff Decker. I work with the Ding Darling Wildlife Society. We are the nonprofit arm of the refuge. We help. We help support them with funding and doing outreach programs such as this to bring you all some incredible people to speak. Unfortunately, the AC is not working, so we do apologize. So thank you for sitting through this, but maybe that'll add to the experience of hearing the python huntress's story out in the wild and out in the humidity. You'll feel like you're there. So it's a little bit more of an interactive sort of thing. Do want to let you know, though, that we do have, Amy is not only an incredible human being, in the work that she's doing, but she also kills and she also skins these pythons using their full bodies to repurpose, and so she has some items for sale in our nature gift shop. And at our nature gift shop, 100% of the proceeds go to the society, so to help programs like this. We do want to offer a special thank you to Tom and Susan Beidel. We just want to thank you guys, or excuse me, Cliff and Susan Beidel. I was looking at Tom while I was saying it. So thank you so much, Cliff and Susan. And just want to thank all the volunteers and the staff that I see in the audience as well. And we just appreciate your time so much for all that you do here. Amy, like I said, has an incredible story to share. I kind of don't want to muddle it and ruin any surprises for you all, so without further ado, Amy Siewe.
I appreciate that. Yes, it might get a little hot in here, you guys, so if you feel the need to leave and take a break, I'm not going to be offended. You're just fine. But yes, my name is Amy Siewe. I am a professional python hunter and guide. I have been in Florida for 6 years hunting the pythons. I started off with the state as a contracted python hunter for 4 years, and then 2 years ago I broke off and I started my own thing, so now I'm a guide and I get to take people out on these crazy adventures catching pythons in the Everglades, right? So I've caught 670 pythons so far. My biggest one was 17.3, 110 pounds, and I caught her by myself. So yeah, it's pretty crazy out there. So we'll talk about that today. Before I get into it, though, I feel like I have to ask the question or answer the question that everybody asks, which is, how did you get into this? Because apparently I don't look like a python hunter. So I'll just give you the quick snippet. But when I was little, my dad took me to a creek and taught me how to catch all kinds of cool critters. He had this, love of nature, and he wanted to pass it on to his kids. I saw a snake for the first time and I was absolutely fascinated. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I don't know why. I mean, why wasn't I home playing with Barbies? I don't know. But it's snakes, right? So I just developed this crazy passion and obsession for these things. And they've always been a part of my life. More of a hobby though. So when I found out that there were pythons in Florida, I thought, wait a minute, I have got to go down and see what this is all about, because I was a real estate broker in Indianapolis for 13 years prior to that. And I had a pretty big business going. And so we came down, I went on a python hunt, I caught a 9-foot python, and I was like, yep, this is it. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know what this is gonna look like, but this is it. So I literally, in less than 2 months of going back home, packed up my stuff, sold my business, rented a room from a guy in Miami that I found on the internet. Yep. And I moved to Florida to figure out how to become a python hunter. And here I am. Now, a lot of people say, you know, okay, well, if you love snakes, why do you kill them? Which is a very good question. And the majority of python hunters are like me in that we do love reptiles. But it makes us really good at our job because we're not afraid of them. We know a lot about them. We continually want to learn about them and try to figure out this problem. But we also have a tremendous respect for the animal. We also have a tremendous respect for the Florida ecosystem, and we know that they have to go. It's unfortunate, but they do. So there's my background, and let us get started. Okay, let me figure this out. There it is. Okay, first of all, everybody knows about the Everglades, right? River of grass, 60 miles wide, 100 miles long, with 9 distinct ecosystems in it, in 1.5 million acres, right? We also have amazing wildlife here, as you all know. The only place where the gators and the crocodiles coexist. We've got so many species of birds, mammals, reptiles, fish, everything, right? We also have over 500 species of invasive and introduced animals. And of course, the introduced species are the ones that are here. They're not supposed to be here, they're not native, but they're not doing any damage to the ecosystem, human health, or the environment, right? So like a chameleon, you know, those little lizards that have the little claw hands and the real long tongues, those are introduced. They're all over, but they're not doing any damage. All they do is eat the bugs, which we have a plethora of. So, but the iguanas, so they are invasive, because, and you guys have them all over Sanibel, because they're burrowers. They burrow to lay their eggs, right? And so they're under the seawalls, under roads, under buildings, and they do hundreds of millions of dollars of damage every year because they burrow, right? But the most destructive, for sure, are the Burmese pythons. So let's talk about that. That's what we're talking about today. And we're going to kind of talk about why they're here, how they got here, you know, what we're doing about it, and why it's so important that they go. First of all of these invasive species work so well here because we have the perfect climate. So we have a subtropical / tropical climate that's where most of these species are from, right? So Florida's perfect, obviously. All the snowbirds love it here, right? So we understand that. You can see, let's see, I think I have a clicker pointer thing on here. Oh yeah. So this is the freeze line. Oh, there it is, right there, right? So you can see South Florida, it's the only place where we don't get any frost. And all of these animals, most of these animals are tropical from the rainforests and the jungles, and they obviously don't freeze. So that's why everything works so well down here. Far away. Now, how did pythons get here? That's a big question. Pythons are here, first of all, it is because of the pet trade. Hands down, no question, right? But there was a breeding facility in Homestead near Miami in 1992 when Hurricane Andrew came through and demolished it. It sent 900 pythons to the same general vicinity of the Everglades. And that is the epicenter of this problem. Now, were pets released? Absolutely. You know, the pythons get to be 20 feet. So when they hit 12 feet, they're too big to house and handle and feed. So people said, oh, instead of, you know, killing my beloved pet, I'm going to let it go live a long, happy, healthy life in the Everglades. So a lot of people did that. But a lot of people had a lot of exotic snakes, other snakes. But the Burmese pythons are the only one that have a stronghold here, and it's because of that hurricane. And they were breeding in that facility for the exotic pet trade. Right, so Burmese pythons were very popular pets because they have a pretty mild disposition in comparison to other big constrictors. And so they were breeding them for the pet trade. And that is how we got here. The problem, right now it's estimated that there's 500,000 pythons out there, which is insane. Now keep in mind, this is just an estimate. There's no way to really know how many there really are because their territory is actually 3.5 million acres, right? And most of it is inaccessible to humans. They grow to 20 feet, as I mentioned before, and the females lay 20 to 40 eggs per year, and the big ones can lay over 100, which is crazy. They are the apex predator, so they don't have any predators. The only time, I mean, we do have some animals that eat them when they're small. So they come out of the egg at 2 feet, which is, you know, as big as some of our native snakes. And so you have like hawks and owls, gators sometimes. We found a transmitted baby hatchling in a cottonmouth, which I didn't even really realize that cottonmouths ate other snakes, but apparently they do. But that doesn't last for very long because these pythons grow so fast that they're not small. Or it takes, you know, and I'll tell this stat later, but 3 years to grow 10 feet, you know. So we've got little babies, not very long. On the menu, what is on the menu? Pretty much everything except for fish, other snakes, and turtles, right? Everything else, and you can see on there. We found a python that had a doe and 2 fawns in her at the same time. Yeah, that was crazy. We had a 35-pound python that ate a 45-pound deer. So it's insane. Their appetite is absolutely voracious, and they're ambush and opportunistic predators, right? So we found a 15-footer that is right along a game trail, right? So a deer comes along, a pig, a coyote, whatever, can just snatch it right up. So it is a major problem, obviously, because we don't even know they're there half the time, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But this was an ibis that I caught the python. It had it halfway in its mouth, actually. So the python kills before it starts eating, so it was too late for the ibis. But that python's never going to eat anything again, so I guess that's a good thing. Yeah. Why are they so successful? Yeah, so those are the eggs. They're like the size of potatoes. It's insane. And it doesn't look like a regular egg. It looks like lemon meringue or lemon pudding or something. It's so gross. It's so gross. I did try to cook them once. It's on my Instagram. It didn't work out very well. But anyway, so why are they so successful? Like I said earlier, so much of their territory is inaccessible. I mean, even if you have an airboat, you know, you're not going to see them out in the swamp. They're so good at camouflage. That is what, in all of these 9 different, thank you, all of the ecosystems, they are perfect. Perfect camouflage. They don't like to be exposed, right? So when they're moving along, when we find them on the roads, they really don't like that. Half the time you're not even going to see them, and I'll show you that an example in a minute. But they spend 85% of their time not moving. So we have to get them, when we're catching them, we have to get them on the 15% of the time that they are. And it's very difficult. And then on top of that, the females guard their eggs. So even if we had animals that want to eat the eggs, they can't because they've got this giant female that is, going to fight to the death to protect those eggs. So we've got a lot going against us with these pythons, that's for sure. You can see the python.
Oh, I see.
That was one we caught, I don't know, maybe a month ago. This one should be a little bit easier. Yep, so they kind of have this sheen to them, right? You want to see what python this was? This little bit that we saw right here. This one. Right? It's insane. So that giant python we saw this much of when we're walking through. Now, the weird thing about these pythons, because they're ambush predators, they won't come out and attack you, right? I mean, their first line of defense is camouflage. So they don't want to move. Like most of our native snakes, how you take a step and then a racer takes off and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even see that there. You wouldn't know it was there until it takes off. That is not how these things work at all. When I first moved here, I worked with the Big Cypress telemetry team, with the scout snakes that have the radio transmitters. And we're walking through, and this guy has his antenna, and I'm following him, and he said, wait a minute, I think we passed it. So we turn around, go back about 10 yards. He's like, wait, we passed it again. So we go back again. Anyways, we dig under 6 inches of loose debris, and there's a 9-foot python curled up that both of us walked on top of twice, and it did not move. So when you guys go on swamp walks and do all of this, have you stepped on a python?
Yeah.
Probably. You're not going to know it. And that's what makes this so hard. I mean, if that snake would have taken off, oh, awesome, here it is. But, yep, they don't do that. I forget what's next. Okay, so I'm sure you guys have seen this or something similar to this, but this is basically the invasion curve. And the problem with these pythons is that we were like right here when we realized it was a problem. Right? It was way beyond help, way beyond what we could do, and we just didn't know it. So what happened was, in 2001, the biologists discovered the first hatchling. And they said, wait a minute, nobody's letting their little $200 python go in the Everglades just to let it go. They're like, we've got a problem. So they went to the powers that be and said, hey, this is an issue. We've got breeding pythons in the Everglades. The powers that be said, it's fine, don't worry about it. It's never going to be a thing. And here we are, 500,000 of them later, with this gigantic problem of the pythons eating all of our native animals. So, yeah, there's that. This is actually a map from back in, between 2008 and 2013, right? And you can see where the yellow is, that's where it was rare. So we have, Marco is right there, right? So we have the main, this is where the breeding center was. And so it all goes out, right? So they start seeing more and more of them. Well, that is 2008 to 13. So let's jump ahead now, or ahead to now. So this is edmaps.org. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but you can go on and see all of the invasive species and where they have been found and located. And this is just the 10,000-foot view. As you get in closer, you can see more detail. And you can actually click on these things and see the actual date that it was caught, and sometimes there's a picture with it. But so you can see down here we've got, in that area, 2,400, 3,200, 13, 12, there's so many, right? And let's see, we've got Marco right around here. So that was the line then. Now we've got all of these, all the way up through here, right?
What happens when they get to freezing weather?
When they get into the freezing weather, they can't survive. So, at least not yet. So with this map, so I zoomed in a little bit on this area, right? So we have, oh my gosh, I'm giving it all away. I'm not used to this one, it's opposite of mine, sorry. So this right here is Sanibel, right? So one was found on Pine Island, I think that was in 2020. So we just have very few of them, right? But they're still here. Now, is that because they're released pets? Maybe, some of them. Or are they moving up here? More likely. You don't start seeing the pythons until it's a problem. For instance, where I live down at Port of the Islands in South Naples, when I first moved here, there's a 10-mile stretch of 41, and I never saw any pythons. And every year we saw marsh rabbits lining the road. Fast forward 4 years, I caught maybe 25 during the spring alone on that 10-mile stretch. And that summer, we saw 2 marsh rabbits the entire year. When you start seeing them, it's too late and it's so sad. This is gonna happen a lot, I'm just letting you know I'm gonna go back a lot. Okay, This is down where I am. So there's Marco. You can, God bless America. So this is Marco, right? And this is, so we have 41 that goes right down here. We have, let's see, where's 29? We've got like Turner River Road, that's 29, I think, or no, that's 29. We got Turner River Road. We've got all of these roads, and you can see there's so many that are caught along the roads, and very few that are caught in the middle, right? And that's because we have to wait for the pythons to come to us. Like I said, they're so cryptic, they're so camouflaged that in the summer, the way that we hunt is at night because they're nocturnal because it's way too hot during the day. So we literally, I've got my truck, I've got a snake deck on my truck, I've got it fitted with lights. We go down, 41 is where I catch 90% of my pythons in the summer. And we look for the snakes, and we're getting them because they're going from the woods and the swamps into the canals, and all the canals run parallel to the roads, right? So we're getting them when they're crossing the roads. So that's, and the ones that are in the middle, that's a lot, Ian at the Conservancy and the Big Cypress team, the ones that have the transmitted snakes with the radio transmitters that they're following, that's, they can find them when they're following the transmitter and just go to the middle of the swamp. If I just go in the middle of the swamp, I'll never find one. Okay. There we are. Now, spoiler alert. Okay.
Yes.
People ask all the time why the pythons aren't an issue in Asia, where they come from. Because they have king cobras, and king cobras eat other snakes, and king cobras get to be 16 feet long. So that is the population control over in Asia. And in addition to the Burmese pythons in that territory, there are also reticulated pythons, and those guys get 30 feet long. So they all live together, but they've got plenty of mammals and no issues with anything. If the reticulated pythons are very mean, they're awful snakes. But if you've heard of the python that ate the grandma in Asia, that's a thing. That's for real. Those reticulated pythons, people are on the menu. So Florida would either, if we had reticulated pythons here, they would either have already figured this problem out, or there would be no tourism here. Because you could literally be walking through the woods and get snagged by a retic. So I guess the good news is the Burmese pythons don't do that. We're looking on the bright side. There is a bright side. Okay. What are we doing about this, right? The state program. The state hired 100 contractors to basically, it was a pilot program when I moved here. And it started in 2017, and they said, hey, they're seeing a lot of pythons out on those levees. Why don't we give some people some keys, pay them for gas, and see what they can find? Well, they found some snakes. So in 2019, when I moved here, I actually moved here, I didn't even know if they were going to continue the program or not, or if they were even going to hire more people, but they did. So in July, they hired the second round of 25 people, which I was a part of that. And then the following year, they hired 50 more, and they're going to cap it at that because of accessibility. If you get too many people on these, few roads that go through the Everglades, the pythons don't take on their normal behavioral patterns, which is the problem with the Python Challenge. We have 1,500 people down here in an area that there should only be 100. And, the roads are insanely crowded. The pythons don't come out like they should. 2 years ago, the 2 weeks before the challenge, I caught 31 pythons. During the challenge, I caught 3. And that's not because other people were catching them, it's because they don't come out. So it's really counterproductive. And I really wish they would quit that contest. But anyway, and you can see there's me on top of my snake deck looking, into the brush on the side of 41 there. The Scout program, where they have the radio transmitters, where they put they implant them. They used to do it just into the males to lead them to the females and to the breeding aggregations in the winter, which, could be 1 female and 5 or 6 males at a time. And now they do it in the females too, just so we can learn more about their breeding habits, their nesting habits, where they nest in relation to, where they breed and all of that. And that little tag there, that's in all of the Scout snakes. So, and they've got one on their tail and one on, right behind their head. It's a fish tag that has all the information on it. So if I catch one, which obviously I did, and I've caught a couple, I take a picture of that, I let the python go right where I found it, and I email the biologist and say, hey, I found your python here, this is where it was on this date, blah, blah, blah. So that's our way of kind of helping out, the biologists. Also, oh wait, you know what, let me go back. Research projects. So there's a lot of research being done right now to try to get this problem figured out. They've done the pheromone, they, I think, decided that didn't work. They're python, like hunting, the actual on-the-road hunting is the most effective thing that we have right now, but it's not really that effective, right? It takes an average of 12 hours to catch one python. Now, I have to say my average is a little better than that, but that is collectively, as all of these agencies together. But the problem is they have to come up with something that won't hurt the environment or other animals. And you have a snake here that starts at 2 feet and gets to be 20 feet. So it's really hard to get that figured out. People ask if drones work with thermal imaging, which the thermal imaging does work if the python is on top of the vegetation. Most of the time, they're not. And then if you have a drone that's, a quarter mile away and there's a python in the middle of the swamp, okay, great, how you getting there? Do you have to cross a canal? Are you in a boat? How do you even get there? And is it going to be there by the time you get there? So there's just a lot of problems with this. Dogs have been used, and there have been a couple of programs that have failed with the dogs for various reasons, and right now, top secret, I have a dog that is being trained to be a detection dog for pythons because we know the issues with the other programs, and so I'm working with a trainer that actually came down here in 2016 to train a successful program, but the government cut that program after 6 months. Even though these dogs were finding pythons, they cut it because back then they said that there were only 50,000 pythons out there, which there might have been, but they were looking for a total eradication answer. They said the dogs are not the answer to total eradication because you can't, they can't just go in the swamp. They might get eaten by an alligator. There are a lot of things, which is true. But the truth is that they can detect way more than we can. If it's just on the road, we can only do it by sight. They can smell it. They're always hiding, like I said, always hiding. So if there's one hiding under the brush, I'm not going to know it, but that dog is. So stay tuned for that. More to come on that, but hopefully that'll help us a little bit. Also, guided python hunts. So I am one of maybe 5 people that do the guided python hunts. This was, the first picture was a few weeks ago. We caught 3 pythons that day. That was a really good day. And then the other picture is that 15-footer that I just showed you earlier. But the way that I do it, and I'm just in case anybody would ever be interested, I teach you how to do all of it, right? On our drive out there, I show you what to do. I can't have a live python, but go through the whole thing, show you what we're looking for, and then if you want, when we see the python, I will walk you through the whole thing. Now, you'd be surprised how many people are gung-ho about getting that python. And then there's a python, and they're like, no, you don't have it. It happens a lot. And that's just fine. It's just fine, because I love to catch pythons, and I want my clients to catch, but if they don't want to catch it, I'm all over it. So it's a pretty fun hunt. And like I said, you can be as involved as you want. Some people hire me just to watch me catch. Some people, get it for their kids, but they want to go, and they're like, they stay in the cab with Dave the whole time. My fiance, he's my driver too. Keep him company. So we get all kinds of people. I get people that, have gone on all the African safaris and have, the trophy rooms full. I get families that go with me. I get, like last summer I had a family of 5, and we actually caught 5 pythons that night. So it was really, really cool. I get, husband and wives, father, sons, girls' night. I get all kinds of people. So yeah. Girls' night is awesome. So I have to tell you this. This happened at one of my girls' nights. It was hysterical. So we already caught a python. And I'm in the back, on the snake deck with a couple of them, and there's one sitting, and there's one in the cab with Dave, and all of a sudden the one girl goes, "Python!" And she goes, "Wait, nope, it was an armadillo." And so then the other girl goes, no, it was a raccoon. And then the other girl is like, no, it was a possum, I saw it. And I'm like, what just happened here? But it was so funny, we were laughing forever about that. But we have a lot of fun, no matter what, we have a lot of fun. I also get people that want to get over their fear of snakes, and they come out on a hunt with me, which it's a really big snake to get over your fear, but people do a great job with it, so, okay, so this is a video that I would show you, but it's not working. But that's okay, because I was only going to be able to show you part of this catch. It was the craziest catch that we've ever had. So you guys have seen the shows, right? The swamp people and all of that. Okay, all of that is fake. Spoiler alert, every bit of it. So literally, they use the same 8 pythons for the entire season. Yeah, so then people come and say, oh, are we going to catch 20 pythons today? No, we're not. Not going to happen. Anyhow, so this happened, and if it would be on the shows, they would have said that this is totally made up, right? So we're on these islands, because in the winter we have to go to Fort Lauderdale, to the Spoil Islands, because there's so much grass and sawgrass and water out there, and the pythons need dry land to breed, right? So over here, there's so much dry land that it's like a needle in the haystack. Over there, they're confined to like those islands. So anyway, so we're busting through these islands, and I've got a dad and his 2 kids with me, and one of the kids yells python. So we all come running, and Dave is yelling right there. He's like, Amy, hurry up, it's a big one. So I'm coming up behind him. So Dave goes down to get it, and so I'm standing there. There's all this dead sawgrass right there. And the dad is standing there, and he's recording this, and he said, Amy, it's right there. And so there was like this break in the sawgrass, so they could see, but I'm standing right over, so I can't see. So I'm like, whatever. So I just stick my hands, down in the sawgrass to see if I can feel for it, and I did. I found it. So I'm like up to my neck, like laying down up to my neck. And Dave's like, I've got the tail. And so I'm trying to feel my way up. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going up to the head. And then all of a sudden, it's a tail. I'm like, there's 2 of them. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I hand it to this, so I look at the guy, so now he stops filming, right? I hand it to the guy, and I said, listen, pull as hard as you can, because I need to go help Dave with this big python down here. I said, because what they'll do is they'll wrap in that sawgrass, and it'll make it impossible to pull him out. I said, so just pull as hard as you can. So I'm like in this stuff, I'm starting to stand up. All of a sudden, I go flying. My legs go flying up, and I'm upside down, and I'm like, what just happened? The python bit my leg, and so when the guy pulled the python out, I went with him. It was the crazy, I can't even explain how weird that was. And so when I figured it out, I was like, oh. And so I told one of the kids, I said, go help Dave get this one, because the big one was trying to get under the rocks, and they're so hard to get. So as I'm standing up, I'm unhooking this stupid thing from my pants, and I stand up. At the same time, they pull this like 12-footer around. It comes around, it strikes at me, so I kind of like move my leg out of the way, and it sits like right in front of me, like up this high. Well, okay, so like it's on the table, it's like up this high. It has its mouth open. And I'm like, this has never happened in the history of ever. I don't even know what to do with this. And so I just thought, okay, well, I guess I'll just, so I went under its throat, and I just grabbed it like that. I was like, did you guys see that? Oh my God, and nobody got it on video. Nobody would ever believe that happened. That whole crazy thing, that could be on a show and they'd be like, they made that up. But no, it happened. And that was definitely, where is this going? So those are the pythons. Yeah, that was a good day for them. That's a spring break they will not forget.
What happens when you get bit by a snake? Like when you get bit by a cat, it can really be bad.
So the question is, what happens when you get bitten by a python? Which, that's a great question leading into this slide. Pythons are non-venomous, right? So they are constrictors, but they still have a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth. So when they bite their prey, they bite it and then they wrap around with the first third of their body and they kind of slew it all the way down, right? So they are razor sharp, and it's almost like a warm knife in butter. It's like when you see it, it's about to happen. Sometimes I can avoid it, sometimes I can't, but I'll look at it and I'm like, yeah, that's happening. So they get you, and it's lightning fast, and then it's like this delayed sting. And then you bleed, and bleed, and bleed. And that's the biggest pain. And with this one, that is a 14-footer. Actually, this 14-footer skin is out there. That's what happens when you bite me, right? So they have 2 rows of teeth on their upper jaw. And so what was going on, there were 4 of us trying to catch this thing. This was back in the early days before I had my tricks. And I don't know even what happened, but the python went back to strike somebody behind me, so I stuck my hand out to block it. I don't know why I did that, but I did. And it nailed me. And the problem was, we hadn't caught the python yet. So I'm sitting here, I'm bleeding like you wouldn't bleed, but I still need to use my hands. So by the end of it, the python is covered in blood, all of us are covered in blood, and it's like, okay, is Amy the only one bleeding? Is everybody else okay? But, so their mouths are not dirty. They don't have really a lot of bacteria just because they don't chew their food like gators and other lizards. They eat it whole. So I have, like Lysol wipes in my truck, mainly just, for when they musk on you when you catch them. But, so I'll just wipe it off with that, and when I get home, I'll put some peroxide on it, and I've never had an issue. Not that there wouldn't be an issue, but so far, there hasn't been.
How many times have you been bitten?
How many times have I been bitten? I haven't. A lot. A lot, yes.
What does it mean when they musk? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. The musking is a defense mechanism. It's a brown, yucky smelling liquid that they secrete from their anal glands as, a defense mechanism, because when an animal is going after it, obviously it's going to go after the tail. So when they just, when they excrete this, in hopes of the animal letting go. We call it the smell of success. When you smell like that at the end of the night, it has been a successful night. And I promise you, when you catch that python, you are not thinking about that. You're like, oh my God, I just caught a python. So yeah, the musking is not a big deal, and it washes right off. So don't let that deter you from coming on a hunt. Okay, why do most people never see a python? Let me see, I don't really know where I am with time here. So this is what I call a road gift over here, the first one. When they are right across the road, you're like, hallelujah, and you don't have to, go through the brush for them. But in the summer, they're only active at night, so you're not going to see them. And most people, they're not here in the summertime, right? So you're really not going to see them. In the wintertime, they're mostly in the woods and the swamps, and they're breeding. So they're not really on the move. They're not eating during the winter because it's too cold, and they're breeding. So it's very rare. How many people in here have seen a python? Okay. Wow. So how big was that one?
I've seen several.
Okay. So like in the wild, like crossing the road or?
Hunting.
So you've gone on hunts before? We'll talk later. Very cool. Okay, I like it. So it's very difficult to find them. I have people that hire me because they've gone out 5 or 6 times and have not seen a python, and they want to learn how to do it. We actually were driving one night, and this guy rolls up to us and he said, "Are there really pythons out here?" I said, "Yep." He said, "I've been out here like 20 times and I've never seen one." So, also he was in a car and didn't have lights, so you have to have the setup to set yourself up for success. But okay, the other one, that was a python crawling up the guardrail. I was like, we were going by pretty quick, and I was like, I don't think that was a guardrail. We're gonna have to go back. And there it is. Okay.
Wait, what? Wait, what's in it?
This is a python eating a deer. Yeah, people ask, are my pets at risk? Well, yeah, 14-footer can easily eat a full-grown golden retriever. Like, that's pretty crazy, right? Do they generally go after dogs that are like that? No. Pythons don't really want to come up to our areas. They want to stay hidden, they want to stay off. You'll see them on the outskirts, like, if you have a nature preserve that's backed up to your house or something like that. Sometimes they're in that little area, but generally they don't. Now, I will say in Homestead, we got a call and there was a python that this lady said, I've got this python. Well, she had a cat food dish out and the python was under the chair. And she was like, I didn't know pythons ate cat food. And we're like, yeah, it's waiting for your cat. So, so it's pretty crazy. People, we're not on the menu. We just aren't, which is good, obviously. There haven't been any documented, cases even of kids that have been eaten by snakes. But, and they don't generally eat in the winter, which is a good thing. I was gonna say something else on that, but I forget what it was.
So a python can digest a deer?
A python can digest a deer. It'll eat and then it'll just sit somewhere for a couple months, and then when it gets hungry again, it'll take off. So yeah, it's not gonna have to eat very much, but yep, that's what they do. If you see a python, yeah. So the reason that I had that on, let's first start. There's an I've Got One app, and you really need to call it I've Got One because they have like a rapid response. They're supposed to. It doesn't always work because pythons aren't really high on the priority list for the sheriff's department. I mean, I hate to say it, but they're not because a lot of times when you see a python, it's gone. 10 minutes later. So, but call them first. If you don't get a response, call me. Now, I'm in Naples, so it's not like I'm going to be able to, come up to Sanibel, but I want to know about it. Take a picture of it. I do get a lot of people that say, hey, I have a python and it's a corn snake, or it's a water snake or something, which is fine. I'd rather know, because sometimes people are like, I don't know what this is. And I'm like, yeah, that's a python. If you can't get the GPS location, that's fine. Just at least mark it with something, like even a piece of trash. I'll take the trash later, but just where it was and which direction it was going, because then I'm going to add it to EdMaps, which I just showed you, so we can have record, especially if it's here. We want to know, especially if it's here, because we don't have any documented, at least on EdMaps at this point, that are on Sanibel. And then run it over. If it's on the road and you see it, just run it over. That's what you're supposed to do. Get the head. These things are insanely resilient, though. They literally, I watched one get run over, its head got clipped by a car. I took it home. It's way before we had to kill him on the spot, but took it home, was going to take it to FWC the next day. I felt bad because I couldn't kill it. I wanted to put it out of its misery. It was fine. It's striking at me and everything. I'm like, I saw you get run over by a car. So anyways, but yeah, aim for the head.
We gotta turn around and do it again.
Saving the glades in style. So this is my wall of skins that I have at my house right now. I hate that, the thought of wasting these pythons. So I skin them on my lanai. I never thought I'd be doing that in 10 million years. And I have them professionally tanned, and then I make leather products, which the leather products I think they're going to be carrying here soon. I didn't get what I needed in time for today, which is, story of, how it always goes. But they will be here soon, and they're pretty cool products. Every python makes a difference, right? So that stat, it takes 3 years for a python to get to be 10 feet. And it takes 200 animals for it to get there. And these things live for 25 years. So even though on the grand scale of things, are we making a difference? Probably not. Because if there are 500,000 of them out there, let's say there are 100,000 of them out there, in the last 7 years since these programs have started, collectively, 25,000 have been caught, right? And they reproduce, you know those numbers. So are we getting ahead of this? 100% we're not getting ahead of it. Are we prolonging the extinction of some of our native animals? Maybe. But if we can do that long enough for all of these researchers to figure out a better way to do this, then it's definitely worth it. Every single python we take out is saving the lives of hundreds of our native animals. So it is worth it, definitely worth it. and follow my adventures. Instagram, Facebook, my website. I have Instagram is probably, well, actually Facebook is now too. I put a lot of videos up there, a lot of like crazy things, educational things, all of that. So definitely follow me and learn some more. And that's all I have for you today. Yeah, I think we have time for some questions, right? Is that what we're? Yes, sir. Okay. And then.
So when you have your dog, is there something that's
When I have my dog, is there something to do to protect them? Yes, train them to sit before the python. I have a dog now that is not going to work. She's a German Shepherd, and she has a really high prey drive. So the very first python that we went to get, it was a 6-footer, thankfully. She's like, yo. She was playing, she was having fun, but yeah, so she's not going to work. So now we have a different breeder, different line. So the dog is trained to sit to indicate that there's a python. So it will not be, it's going to be a lab. Okay, I saw you in the back right there.
Okay, the Ukrainians are effectively using drones against the Russians.
Yes.
Seriously, can't drones be AI enabled to kill a python when they detect one?
So how would they do that?
Shoot it.
Right, so what if it kills a native snake? What if it kills a different animal? There's a lot of issues with that, and if they can get that fine-tuned maybe, but right now, that's not a thing. They don't have it developed enough.
Is it a possibility in the future?
Everything's a possibility.
Okay.
Is there any way of, you tag the males and let them back into nature to try to find the females? Is there any way of sterilizing those males before you release them back into the nature?
Yeah, so they're working on that. I'm not sure, that's kind of above my pay grade as far as where they are with that. One of the problems with that is that the breeding aggregations are 1 female and 5 or 6 males, and that could happen 5 or 6 times during the breeding season. So as the sterilization works through the population, it's going to take a very long time. Okay, over here.
Once you catch one, how do you kill it?
Once I catch one, I use a captive bolt gun to kill it, like what they use in Pigs and Sheep. What is the movie? No Country for Old Men or something like that? Okay, except that it doesn't have the like oxygen tank or whatever that is. So it's like a piston that comes out and goes right into the brain and then goes back up into the cylinder. So it's very quick and humane, and American Veterinary Association approved. Okay, so I see right on the end here. Yep.
So when you go out, not just on the road, but when you go out in the bush, there's also eastern diamondbacks and cottonmouths and stuff out there. What do you wear? Snake boots and?
Well, I didn't wear snake boots until I tore my ACL, and I had to wear a brace, and then the high boots actually held up my brace. So it actually hinders me a little bit when I'm, in summer, at night, we're not walking through anything. We're literally on the back of the truck, and we only get off the truck when we see a python, and we're not going into the brush. In the winter, when we're jungle busting, yeah, there are cottonmouths out there. We don't generally see any rattlesnakes. It's a chance, but usually the cottonmouths take off, so I haven't had any issues so far. All right.
Would you describe your closest call during your career?
My closest call during my career. You know, the thing about these pythons is that since they don't look at us as food, you know, when they bite, it's a defensive strike. They don't bite and wrap. If I'm in a situation that I'm holding on to this python and it's wrapping me up and I'm not comfortable with it, all I have to do is let go. And the python will unravel and take off. So, I know, does that take like the danger out of it? but that's really, I mean, so it's not really a concern. So I haven't had any close calls. Now, I always say there might be that one python that's like, I think I'm going to try a person today. If that happens, I'm out of luck. So hopefully that won't happen. And I'll live to tell the story. Okay, I saw back here.
I just wonder, and maybe it's because they're too tough and it wouldn't be possible, once you have them by their head, why don't you just cut it off right there instead of fighting with it?
It is very difficult to cut off a python's head.
I kind of figured that.
like very difficult. And the thing is, you also have to get the brain, because the way reptiles are weird, they're not like mammals, so they're still conscious if you cut the head off, right? So I will tell you this quick thing. Before I knew any of this, in the beginning when we were all still learning, I was taking a guy to have it skinned, but I had it alive, and so he cut the head off. I didn't know we were supposed to pith it and destroy the brain. It was like an 8 or 9 footer. So it's literally curled up, like in striking position, without a head, dripping blood from its neck. And if you would touch it, it would like turn. It was so creepy. So creepy. So you have to, if you're gonna cut the head off, if you can get the head off, you have to have a tool or something to get into the brain. And then once the brain is destroyed, then you're good. But yeah, that's a good question. Way back there.
How fast can they travel or move?
As far as speed, how fast can they? They're very fast when they want to be. So if, for instance, my friend, who is a big guy, he's like, I don't know, 6'3", 325, like he's a big dude, right? And there was a 17-footer. It was actually right at San Marco Road in 41. It was crossing. He was right in the middle of the road. And the thing about these big ones is that they don't really look at us. You know, they don't really know what to make of us. So when I jump on the back, I have about 5 to 7 seconds of nothing. It just sits there. Because it's like, I'm not sure what's happening. And then it's like, all right, I don't like this anymore. And then it's game on, right? So he has a 17-footer, and he goes and he jumps on it. Well, it doesn't do anything. So he has one hand on it. He uses the other hand to call his brother, who was 15 minutes ahead of him, to tell him, like, hey, I've got this python. Well, they do this like little twisty thing. He has one hand on it, did the twisty thing, and was in the canal in like 2 seconds. And it's a 17-foot python.
With this phone?
But yeah, so he probably still has nightmares about that. So anyways, they are very, very fast when they want to be. Okay, a couple more.
People eat rattlesnake meat, I guess, but is there anything about python meat? Has anyone tried that?
Python meat is disgusting. Python meat, we actually took a python up to a chef in Fort Myers to cook it, and he made 4 amazing dishes. I mean, they were very good dishes, but it was so chewy. I mean, so chewy. And the difference is the rattlesnakes are venomous, so they don't need muscle. The pythons are constrictors. So they have, like, they're just one solid muscle. And plus they're full of mercury, so we shouldn't eat them. You know, we put them in our crab pots. Crabs didn't want them. We used it for shark bait. Sharks didn't want them. So, you know. So, yep. Okay, how many more? One more question maybe, or? Okay.
Do they expect the population to collapse if there are no more mammals in South Florida?
That's a great question, and I don't know. So the thing is, they're moving north, right? So you saw that one map that, you know, they're following the food. So basically on the East Coast right now, because almost all the mammals are gone, their main diet is birds and gators, which that's not very high on their menu if they have a choice of a nice juicy mammal, right? And the pythons on the East Coast are smaller generally than the ones on the West Coast. So all the records have been on the West Coast because we've got so much more food over here still, because we also have so much dry land. So they are moving north, following the food. Now, when they hit that freeze line, what's going to happen? They are very adaptable. There's a study they did, and pythons can live for a year in salt water, which is crazy. So they would have to start to take on some hibernation or brumation behaviors in order to move past that freeze line. And how long that would take? Probably a long time, but you know, these pythons love to prove us wrong at every single turn. So who really knows? But so I don't know. It's kind of a waiting game. Hopefully we get it figured out before we find out, but we just never know. So, okay, last one.
So I don't know that you explained exactly to everybody on how you actually catch it. Like go through the...
How I actually catch the python. Right, so we're on the back of the truck. There's a python. We yell, python! It's the most fun word to yell ever. And we jump off the truck, and I just grab it with my hands. So if it's a big one, I'll just kind of straddle it and jump on it and get my hands right behind its head And then somebody, if it's like a 17-footer, will tape its mouth just to take the bite out of the equation. If it's a smaller one, grab it behind the head. And then I grab the tail just to aim the musk away from me. But yeah, all the shows have grabbing them by the tail. If you grab them by the tail, you will be bitten. I promise you. So if you can't, now sometimes we have to, because if they're taken off or that's the only part of them you can see, you have to grab them by the tail. Now, do I have time for one more quick little? Okay. So what I found is that, when I tell people when they go on hunts with me, I say, if you grab it by the tail, it's going to bite you. Okay. So if you do have to get it by the tail, well, first of all, let me know. I'll get it. It's no big deal. But if you want to do it, grab the tail and pull it out and just kind of throw it to get it into the open space so then we can get it, right? So this guy is with us. He's 6'5", big guy, wrestles alligators. And I was like, listen, I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, but just if it, don't drop it. Because if you drop it, then I have to dive in, and I've done that a few times, and that's why I have this speech now. But, so he's like, oh, yeah, oh, no problem. Not a big deal. I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought, I just want to make sure. So we find a python, it's 5 feet, very small python. And so I'm kind of hanging back, just, let him do his thing. He had his little camera guy with him. And so he goes over, he could grab it by the head, but he decided to grab the tail, I think, for effect. So what happens? He lets go and stands there and looks at it. I'm like, oh my God. So I dive in and I'm on my stomach and I got it by the tail, so I saved it. But then we got another one that was a really long, weird catch for him. He took a long time because he was scared, which is fine. It's totally fine and I get it, but he's, acting all macho. So then, after that one was like an 8-footer. So he said, can I let this one go and recatch it? Just right here. And I was like, okay, so he's got his little camera guy. So he, does this whole and grabs it. So what video do you think made his social media? The fake one. So anyways, that was all. All right, I won't keep you guys in this hot room anymore. Thank you so much. You've been amazing.